Welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Today I'll be explaining how to look after grapevines, how to construct a frame within your greenhouse for them to grow up, and how to look after those in the first few years of them growing. So, preparing the greenhouse. The grapevines are going to be planted just out there, so the roots will be outside, and the shoots need to pass into the greenhouse somewhere around here. Now my original plan was they were going to come through this that I've put in already, but unfortunately the plants have come. This is my own fault. What I should have done was waited to get the plants and then sorted this out, but hindsight's a precise science. So I'm going to have to come through the glass basically somewhere here. Now I've thought of a number of ways of doing this. I could potentially replace the glass with a piece of aluminium, so basically have a shorter pane of glass here, and then so the bottom part would be aluminium, and then cut two holes in that. Unfortunately I've gone through my garage and I haven't got a piece of aluminium that's wide enough. I could potentially do it with steel, but I don't really want to do that because I don't want to put steel next to aluminium, because you can get a reaction between the two metals. So what I've decided to do is I've found a piece of Perspex. So what I'm going to do is replace this bottom pane with Perspex, so then I can cut two holes here and here about a foot off the ground, so I can pass the grapevine through into the greenhouse. So as soon as it's inside the greenhouse, it's going to travel up the side through these holes that I've cut into the shelf, and then it's going to go up to the roof, and then it's going to go along the roof to the other side. So basically the grapes will be inside the greenhouse when it's all finished. So the first step is to basically remove this glass, and the way to do this is you start at the top, remove the top pane. As soon as you've got the top pane out, you then work down until you get to the bottom, and then you replace the bottom pane with Perspex, and then work your way back up and put the glass back in. Now this pane of glass here, I don't know if you can see, there's actually a crack in it here. So what I'm going to do is actually replace this piece of glass and then put this one and this one on top of it, and then that'll obviously match up to here again. So step one is to remove the 4 panes of glass that are in this end, and then what I'll do is I'll use this pane of glass as a template to make the piece of Perspex, so I know that it's exactly the right shape and size. So I'm on the outside of the greenhouse looking at the same piece that you've just seen, and to remove the glass, some greenhouses are slightly different, but there's these clips here, and the way to remove them is it's clipped round the glass at the back, and then it's sprung loaded, and it clips into a little groove in the back of this strut here. So if I push that clip forward, I can't do this one. Oh, there you go. You do easily come out, and then that's the clip that holds the glass in. So basically remove all of the clips, and then basically the piece of glass will come away from the greenhouse, and then work your way down till you get to the bottom pane. So I'll take it all out, so I shall do that now. So all the panes of glass are now out of the greenhouse, and there's a whole raft of clips, and if you've never put a greenhouse together before, these are the clips I've just taken out. So you have small ones, small ones like that, which go between the pieces of glass, so one piece of glass fits in there, then the other one fits in there, and then you have these clips, those that hold it into the frame. There are various varieties of these. You can get sort of wire ones as well, working exactly the same way. They just clip the glass into the frame. When dealing with glass, always the secret is go steady. Don't try to flex the glass because it will break on you. So as you're taking it out, I don't know if you saw me then, there's some like plastic rubbery stuff in here to keep the seal in the glass. And what I did was just very gently got a thin knife, and then just drew that down between the glass and the rubber, just to pull it away from the rubber a little bit, and then tease the glass out. So what I need to do is, I've got all of the glass outside, so these are the two panes that will go back in. That's the top pane of glass, which will go into the top of the apex. And now this is the piece of glass which I will replace with the Perspex. So what I'm going to do now is go down to the garage and replace, basically cut a piece of Perspex out which is identical to this. So here's the piece of Perspex I'm going to use, and as you can see it's slightly thicker than the glass, so I may need to do a bit of jiggery pokery with the clips, but I'm sure it'll fit in. So the reason I'm using the glass as a template is I want to make sure that I cut the piece of Perspex square so it fits into the frame perfectly, and also it makes sure that I get exactly the right size. Now if you are cutting Perspex, the easiest way to do it is with a jigsaw, which is exactly the way I'm going to do this. And I'm just going to use a very fine permanent marker. Obviously you need something that will go into the Perspex. Failing that, what you can do is score it with something sharp, but it's much easier to see if you use a marker. So what I'll do now is mark round the sides of this piece of glass, then turn it around, because I've got as you can see I've got this corner missing here where I said it was cracked, and I'll turn it around and then draw the shape perfectly, and then I shall cut it out with the jigsaw. So as you can see, I've drawn around the line where I need to cut, just about make that out on the Perspex, and I'll be cutting this with a jigsaw with an axle blade in, so you don't want anything that's too coarse, otherwise you may start to chip the Perspex. So I shall now cut this out. So I've cut the piece of Perspex, and I just want to see if it fits in there. Right, okay, so that fits quite well. Now, one thing I need to check is that these clips will fit on top, which they don't. So what I need to do is modify the clip slightly. So I think I'll probably have to force that on. Yeah, that'll be okay. So the next bit is I'll need to cut a hole somewhere here, and another hole somewhere here, probably about a foot off the ground, so that the two grapevines will come through the hole here. Oh, it's fallen. And then another one there. When I cut the Perspex, that blade I showed you a few moments ago, it was starting to make the plastic melt. So what I did is I used a slightly coarser blade in the jigsaw, which I'll show you in a moment. So if the plastic starts to melt, that means you're not cutting it quick enough. So use a coarser blade, or just a slightly coarser blade. So this is the place where the vines are going to pass through. All I've done is measured up 20 centimetres from the bottom and 6 centimetres in from the side, and I've just drawn around a pot. What I'll do is now drill a hole through there so I can get the jigsaw in, and then just cut round with the jigsaw exactly like I did the edges. So there's the finished product. As you can see, the hole here, there's a hole there, and these are the two pieces cut out. As you can see, I drilled the hole and then cut in and then went round. You know, there's the other one, and the blade that I used looks a bit like that. So putting the glass back in, as you can see there are the two holes for the grapevines to pass through. Now putting these clips back in is the opposite way, so than it's just taking them out. So just to explain, when I took them out, I pulled this top part away. To put them back in, you first click that into the frame and then push that bit round the glass like that. So to take it out, you pull the top bit out. To put it back in, you put the top bit in first and then push the bottom bit round like that. So the glass is now back in eventually. That top piece there was a little bit tricky, but I can remember having a bit of a game with that when I first put it in. The problem is there's a lip all the way around it, so you have to kind of slot the glass in, but the little clips at the bottom tend to fall out if you do that. So I'll just show you from the inside what it looks like. So there you go, all the glass is back in. Do notice I haven't actually cleaned the glass. You're much better off cleaning the glass when it's in the frame. It's safer there, and also you're not likely to cut yourself like I just have on the edges of it. So what I need to do now, the next step, is to put something around the edge of this so that the plant doesn't rub against this and get damaged. So because the edges of that are quite, well, they're not sharp, but obviously if a plant's resting against it, it's going to damage it. So I'm now going to look into putting something around there. So to protect the plant from getting damaged by the sharp edges, what I've done is I've put a piece of pipe round by slitting it so it would fit over the glass. So this is a bit of, I think it's silicone pipe, and if you can see, I've put a slit in the pipe, and then you can fit that over the plastic like that, and then just work your way around. It's almost impossible to do this one-handed, but as you can see, it sits on the glass like that. Work your way around and then just cut it off to length, so you end up with a seam at the bottom, so you end up with that. There we go, so no sharp edges on the edges of the plastic for the plant to damage itself. Now the next step is to put a brace across here from one part of the frame to the other, and then I'll start to bring up the poles to bring the vines up to the roof. So now I've got the wall braces on. So I've got an aluminium strip going across from one side to the other, bolted in firmly at each end, and I've made these pipe sections with a square at the end to bolt it to the next bit. There's a slight curve which brings it about 3 inches away from the glass. The reason being is I obviously want to protect the vines from frost in the winter. Then that comes off, and then it's bolted again to the brace here with a bolt, screw bolt there going through, and then it carries all the way up, so it's just off about 1 inch or so off the top glass on both sides. There's a slight offset here, as you can see. It's not quite in the centre because I've made it to align with the bottom original holes, so these holes here were slightly off, so basically I've made it to match these holes here, which was slightly different to the 2 holes that I put through the glass, but it won't matter because the grapevine will come through here and then can easily attach to there. It doesn't matter if it's slightly out, it's only about ½ an inch. So the next part is to make the braces which will take it across the top of the roof. So the method to hold the rods to the top of the roof is by making 4 brackets like this. This is again a 2-inch strip of aluminium, and I intend these to sit in the roof like that. Now the reason it's this big is it gives me plenty of headroom, but also this hole here, if you notice, it's about 6 inches away from the glass, again because of frost in the winter. I want to protect the vines, and I've also tried to get the 2 vines as far apart as possible, so here they're actually about 12 inches apart. Now I'll have one of these for every roof truss, so again there'll be one here. The existing one above it I'll remove, so there'll be one of these on every truss working all the way back, and then basically there'll be, through these larger holes here and here, there'll be again a 15mm pipe which will take it from those 2 parts I've already installed at the back all the way to the end here. Now the way I did this was got a piece of aluminium, and just by placing it onto the roof like that, I drew a line onto the aluminium down, obviously from the other side, and likewise on the other side, and then that's how I know what the angle is and where the holes need to be to screw it into the top. And then I just measured the best places for the vines to go, and then just drilled 15mm holes in there. So I'll now show you how to make those brackets. So that's what we're going to end up with. So basically I need 4 of those. So the first thing you need to do is, that's the line there that I measured off the, that's the line there that I measured off the greenhouse roof. I've measured out 22mm to draw that line. Then that's going to fold up to form that part. And then I've measured where all of the holes need to be, and I'll put a centre punch in the middle so I can target the drill. So the first step is to cut out the bits of metal that we don't want, so I need to cut along there, and the same on the other side, so that corner off and that corner off. So I've cut out the 3 pieces of metal to make the 2nd, 3rd and 4th bracket, and I've drilled the holes in for the pipe and the holes in at the end. I've marked the line in 22mm in from the edge, so that's where I need to bend it. It's always important when you're drilling a big hole, start small and then work your way up to to that. I've actually slightly filed these out so that when the pipe goes in, there's a bit of give, so I can actually so I'm not straining the roof of the greenhouse when I tighten it all up. So the next thing to do is to bend these sections along this line here. So the way to bend it is to put it in the vise. So I don't know if you can see, but so the line is just above the vise jaws, about 1 millimetre or so will do. Make sure it's in there really tight, and then pull the metal towards you, tapping it on the back with a hammer to ensure that it bends here rather than further up. So I've now bent it down. Predominantly I was tapping it in this area here to bend it over, and I'm only using a sort of hammer that big. You don't need anything too big to bend. This is only aluminium. Now I just need to repeat that process on the other 5 sort of bends on the remaining 3 brackets. And there are the 4 identical brackets. So all I need to do now is to put the pipe through, so thread these onto the 2 sets of pipe and bolt them up into the roof of the greenhouse. It's important to note that each of the 4 brackets needs to be perfectly identical, otherwise you could potentially, when you bolt it into the greenhouse roof, you could potentially be putting stress onto the roof. So make sure that all of the angles are the same, the holes are in the same place, so that when you bolt it all up, it's all square and true to the roof. If you do find that some of the brackets are slightly out, don't be tempted to try and bolt them into the greenhouse roof, because you could potentially contort the roof of the greenhouse and cause the glass to break. So you can see I've got it bolted into the roof, and these bars are still, as you can see, I can still turn them, so they're not going to put any stress onto the roof to pull it on square. So the grapevines are going to come buried in the ground out there with the roots through these holes here, and then they're going to be trained up these poles through these holes and then up, at which point it'll then switch to this bar here, and then it'll run along this bar, or the rod as they're called, will run across, and then it'll finally be terminated here just before the door. I've not painted these bars quite yet, because I wanted to get them into the roof before I painted them, because I was worried that they might, as they move on here, I was worried that it might damage the paint there. So now they're fixed and in place and in the right position, I can now paint these. So I'll paint those in the next couple of days, but I shan't need to worry about that too much. The reason I painted these now is obviously the grapevine will be put through the hole any minute now, and then obviously I didn't want the paint to be either wet or any odour to be coming off the paint onto the grapevines. So these are the 2 grapevines which are going to go into the greenhouse, or be planted outside to grow into the greenhouse. Both of these were bought from a company called Pomona Fruits. This one is called Grape Flame, which is a seedless variety, and the second one is also a seedless variety called Grape Lake Moor. Now these 2 will be planted with the roots outside and the branches going through the hole, as you've seen here on in the side of the greenhouse. And basically, to prepare the hole for these, I've dug out down to about 18 inches, and I'll enrich the soil with potting compost and dig that into the subsoil underneath them. I shall be then building up the ground level so that the top of these pots here will be at the same level as the ground will be finally. And then as soon as I've done that, I shall be adding some of this, which is called root grow, which is it's a fungus which promotes the growth of the roots of the plant. So I shall be sprinkling that underneath the plant, so when the roots grow through, it'll it'll be infected by the fungi, and the roots will grow down at a considerably faster rate than they would normally, which will then establish the roots into the ground, and then I shall be topping up soil round with some more potting compost and normal ground earth combined, so there'll be an enriched soil around the plants. So here's the hole that I've dug out. It's around 18 inches deep. I don't know if you can quite see that. And the plants will be planted here, and they'll be passing through these holes in the greenhouse at the back that I've shown you previously. So the first thing to do is to add some potting compost to this subsoil at the bottom to enrich it, and then I shall be adding some topsoil back into that to bring it up to the level. I shall also be adding some fish bone and blood meal as a fertiliser to also enrich the soil a little further. So the first step is to put the compost in, and I'm going to put about half a bag or so of compost in. And I'm going to use the spade just to mix that in with the actual soil that's still in the hole. There's quite a few stones down here, just at the bottom, about 2 foot down in this allotment I get to sandstone at this end, so I'm just making sure that all of the soil I'm also going to go slightly underneath the greenhouse so that the roots can go under there as well. Now I've got a feeling that I've put a little bit too much compost in there, so what I'm going to do is just bring a bit out. It looks a bit too rich in compost, so I was going to take a few spades out. You can always take it back out after. And then I'm going to add in, I've taken about, to give you an idea, I've taken about a wheelbarrow of dirt out of here. That gives you an idea of how much dirt I've fetched out. So that's the ground underneath prepared now, and that's about the right depth for the pots. Obviously I need to step this down a little bit, stamp this down a bit. So the next thing I'm going to do is add, for grapevines you don't want the ground to be too rich, but I'm going to put some fish blood and bone meal in. It's quite hot today, so that's why I'm out of breath. So I'm going to mix that right in. Now, even though this is fertiliser, it's an organic fertiliser and it's very slow releasing, so this will feed the grapevine for the next few years. So I'm just levelling it off now, so that's all mixed in. And now what I'm going to do, without throwing myself through the greenhouse glass, is just stamp the ground down, because what I don't want is, when I put the grapevines in and water them, I don't want them to sink into the ground, because obviously the stalks will be, sorry, the shoots will be coming through here into the greenhouse, and I don't want any strain to be put on those. So I want the roots to stay in the same kind of position. Now, as you can see now, I've stood on a bit. That's quite possibly about the right sort of height. So what I'll do now is just go and get one of the grapevines to check that the height is correct. So as you can see, the level of the soil in the pot is the same level as the ground level. So now comes the delicate bit. What I need to do is get these shoots through these holes and the roots back to where they are now without snapping anything off. So the way I'm going to do this is, first of all, to take the grapevine out of its pot. Now I've been soaking these. I gave them a good watering last night, and they've had a watering about half an hour ago. Sorry, but before I do that, what I'm going to do is put some of this this root growth fungus. Now basically you don't want to put this into the soil. What you want to do is put this so it's actually in contact with the vine roots. So as soon as you've opened this, it will actually last for 12 months. You need to keep it sealed and in the fridge after you've opened it. But it will keep in the fridge. And you don't want you don't want too much, you just want this little scoop inside. And basically all you need to do is where the plants are going to go, just sprinkle a little bit of the, something like that is more than enough. And now what I'm going to do is obviously the first one's going to go here, right up against this hole here, and pass through there. So first thing I'm going to do is take it from its pot, and by putting my hand over, turning it upside down, I'm going to release it from its pot. As you can see, the roots at the bottom there will be in contact with that fungus. I'm just going to place it down just in the ground at the moment, because what I next want to do is to remove the supporting cane in there. So with a pair of scissors, I'm just going to very quickly snip the tags which are holding it up against the stick. I'm going to be really careful how I do this, because what I don't want to do is snap the rods off the grapevine. So now that's off, I'm going to pull the stick out of the way, and with one hand holding the rods together, I'm going to lift up the grapevine. Obviously the weakest point is going to be where the graft is. So I'm just going to pass them through the hole into the greenhouse. You want to go in slightly more than, take your time over this. You don't want to break any of the leaves off or anything like that. No, the root's going to go like that. So I'm just going to get a bit of this dirt and just pack it up underneath, like that. Now before I put the other one in, what I'm going to do is, obviously there's an air gap at the back here, so with a bit of this compost I'm just going to fill in the holes around, and obviously I will be sort of stamping them in after with my feet, just to firm the ground down. Just make sure as many leaves as I can possibly get inside the greenhouse are in there. Be really careful when you're doing this, because these are very easily broken. Now, in the literature with these plants, it says ideally you want to plant these 2 metres apart, but obviously because I'm putting these in the greenhouse, I don't have that luxury. I could have put them through the corners of the greenhouse, I suppose, and still keep them that far apart, but I've chosen to put them through the back here, so I can train them up the same as each other. But ideally you should be planting these about 2 metres apart. So now that's nice and firm and there's no air gaps at the back. I can now do exactly the same with this side to put in the second grapevine. Now before I go any further, what I will do is put the name tag off the plant on the inside, so I know which grapevine is which. So now I'll put the second one in exactly the same way. What I need to do now is fill the hole in. And what I'm going to do is basically put a handful of compost and then a handful of, or 2 of dirt. Basically I'm just mixing up exactly what's under them. What I do need to make sure of is that there's no air gap between the plants and the greenhouse. So now I've got that much in, I'm just going to get down, just mix that up and make sure it's all packed in nice and hard up against the plants, so that no roots are got any air pockets in or anything like that. Okay. I'll just carry on with that. So, some compost first. And of course you need to consider that these plants are going to be potentially in this ground for 30 years or so. So it's well worth making sure you've got the right nutrients in the ground when you first start. This is the easiest time to put it in. I'll just give them a quick mix. Also being careful not to damage the roots of the plant. And then I'm just going to add a little bit more fish blood and bone meal. The stuff, I think you need to be careful with this because it's not particularly healthy to get it on your hands, depending on where you bought it from, but the bone meal can potentially be carcinogenic, so you need to be careful. If you're not sure, either wear gloves or do what I do, just don't touch it. Sprinkle it in from the box and then just deal with it with the spade. Now, all I need to do now is just gently firm the soil down. You don't want it to be too firm. You want to make sure that basically there's no air gaps existing between the grapevines and the ground. Now what I need to do is give these grapevines a really good soaking of water. So what I'll do now is put a couple of cans of water on there, and then I shall give it an hour or so. Then I shall put another 2 cans on, and I'll probably end up putting 6 cans of water on there because the ground is reasonably dry. I want to make sure that they're really well watered in. Obviously, any plant when you first transplant it, the roots do get shocked. So what you want to make that as easy as you can for the plant, so we recover as quickly as possible. So there, the grapevines in. So what I'm going to do now is get some water and give them a really good watering in. Now there are many different ways of growing or training grapevines. What the supplier of these recommends is you take these shoots are called rods, and it says take the strongest 2 rods and train them up and over your frame. Now with this one, obviously this is the strongest rod here. However, in transit, the top got slightly damaged on there, so I'm not sure if that's going to recover, or if I need to take the other 2 rods as the ones that I'm going to use. So for now, I'm going to leave all 3 on that one, and this one only actually has 2 on it. So all I'm going to do now is obviously the framework here. First of all, I'm going to do is, what I don't want to do is make sure that all of the leaves that are coming from the inside are inside, like that. And then the first thing I'm going to do is tie it to the bottom of this steel rod. And what I'm going to do is a piece of string about 9 inches long, and I'm going to tie it once round the back of the pole, pulling it really tight. And then I'm going to tie round the grapevine rod, where I'm going to tie this really loosely. I'm not going to tie it very tight at all, so it's anchored in, but there's still some movement in there. What you don't want to do is strangle the plant or cause it to become bruised. And then I'm going to do this exact same thing a little bit further up. Now this one here is probably okay for a while, so what I'm going to do is tie this one about 9 inches above the last one, and I may well need to release this later and tie this one in again. But as you can see, they send out these little tendrils here which will wrap around the pole anyway, so as soon as it's got established it should tie itself to the framework. So in exactly the same way, I'm going to, at the back, tie it with one single knot, pull it nice and tight so it doesn't, I'm stopping it from moving up and down. Tie it again just to anchor it off, and then tie round the rod like that, leaving it reasonably loose so it's got some movement. And this is exactly the same way as you would tie up exactly the same way as you tie up either tomatoes or any other sort of cucumber plants. So right at the bottom there, because you don't want any movement round where it comes into the greenhouse, because that's where the wind's going to catch it if anyway. Double knot at the back, nice and tight so it doesn't move, like that. And then obviously this is the one with 3 rods on, so I'm going to go around all 3 rods, and I'm just going to tie it with a double reef knot like that, and again and then all of these 3 I will again tie about there. This is a little bit lower than the others, but I don't want anybody to catch the grapevine and damage it, so I need to keep these as close until he gets up to the roof. I need to keep them as close as I can to here so it doesn't get damaged. One point that I haven't made yet, whilst I was making the framework, the reason I've kept the pipes about 3 inches away from the glass is so in the winter when we have some frost, none of the grapevine will actually be touching the glass, and you know, so it can't get damaged by the frost in any way. So that is pretty much it. Obviously when the end of the summer comes, these leaves will be dropped from the grapevine rods, and in the holes here what I'll be doing is getting some probably some cotton, just some old bed sheets or pillowcases or an old t-shirt or something like that, and I'll be basically bunging up the hole to stop any drafts coming in during the winter, and just to protect the top part of the plant. I'll obviously block these bottom holes off here. I'll put a piece of metal across there. Those are the ones that I cut originally, and all I need to do now is see if this strong one here grows. If it doesn't grow, I shall cut that back to the rootstock and just carry on with these 2 slightly weaker ones. If that does recover, I'll obviously take the weakest one of the 3 away in a few weeks' time, depending on how it's grown. Okay, so to look after the grapevines, I'll be watering them every week for the first year that they're in, just to make sure that they're well watered. I'll be feeding them in the spring, and then also in the spring I shall put a mulch of well rotted chicken manure on top of them. And to train the vines, I'll just be letting 2 of them grow up the poles and along the poles that I've constructed, and then next year I will allow 3 bunches of grapes to grow. The year after I'll allow 5 bunches of grapes to grow, and then after that, as soon as the rod or the shoot's got to the end, I shall allow the whatever grapes to form on there to come. Now on each shoot coming from here, you wait for there'll be 1 bunch of grapes, then a leaf, and then the next bunch of grapes you then prick off. So from every side shoot from the main rod, you'll only allow 1 bunch of grapes, say here, and then so on as it goes up. Okay, thanks for watching Jim's Allotment Garden, and I hope that this episode, all about growing grapevines and building the frame within a greenhouse to hold it, has been of some use to you. Please let me know how you're getting on with your grapevines. Please place comments below, please subscribe, and I'll see you again on another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden.